Now, welcome everyone. My name is Maureen Hamblin, and we are joined by Diane, my good friend Diane Ihirwe. Is that how you say it?
That's
Yeah.
perfect.
Diane Ihirwe, me and Diane, like I can't even remember like how long we've kind of known each other, but it's been mostly on Facebook. But we rant about the same things over and over again. So I want to welcome you all to the second episode of Rant and Pray. The first episode was just me kind of sharing my stories about racism in Ireland, Northern Ireland, a bit about America, and then today I want us to hear Diane's story, but also to talk about the effects of racism on Black people, but also people of color, and our children. So welcome Diane, and yeah.
Thanks for having me, Maureen. It's an absolute pleasure to be here because, like you said, we see things in similar ways, and sometimes it can be difficult to find people who actually understand things the way you do. So it's nice to be here. So thanks for having me.
Oh, thank you for coming along to this, because you have 4 kids, is it?
I do. 4 babies.
She has 4 babies, so she's taking time out to speak to us, and I am absolutely grateful. I don't take that for granted. My kids are in the next room watching TV and eating tuna and sweet corn for dinner.
Yeah.
So thank you for joining us. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, let me see. Where do I begin? So my name is Diane, and I have 4 babies. I have 3 boys and a girl. The baby is a girl. So I've been waiting for her for so long, but finally I got her, so I'm done. And I suppose in 4 days I will qualify to be a social worker. Yay!
Yay!
Yay! I'm excited. So I'm doing a master's at the moment in Trinity in social work, and my undergrad is in social care.
Nice.
And I suppose I've worked with different people. I've worked with children, adults, elderly people, asylum seekers, different people. I find I just have a passion for speaking up against inequalities. I don't have the fear of calling people's bias and prejudice, and that
No,
has
she does
led me
not.
and that has led me to kind of different projects, along the way. I suppose in December, I went to Geneva in the UN to speak on behalf of asylum seekers. And at the moment, we started a group, me and my friend, called Rooted in Africa and Ireland, which is going to be a group that will support the African heritage in Ireland, a group that will kind of instill a pride of being African and a pride of being Irish in equal measures. So
Yeah.
that's me. Yeah.
Yeah, wow. So tell me, how long have you been in Ireland? Yeah.
I've been in Ireland since I was 16 years old, so 12 years. 12
Yeah.
years in August. So 12 years. And yeah, it's been good and bad, but there've been loads of good. I think what people don't understand is that when we speak up against the bad and inequalities, people think we hate this country, but we don't. I speak up because I love Ireland. I love this country, and
Yeah.
I want it to be a good place for my kids to grow up. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. I hear you, and for quite a long time, I I could only, you know, I'd be lying if I said I wasn't very confused about being African. I moved to Ireland when I was 11, before I was a teenager. It was, and then you end up you live, so I've lived in Ireland longer than I lived in Kenya, and it's confusing. You get to a point where you're like, so where is home exactly? But I must say, even when I was in America, I couldn't have spoken more proudly of Ireland than I did when I was there. Like, I was always saying how great it was, how, you know, wonderful it is, and, you know, and stuff like that. So, like, I get you, like, when I speak up about against racism, or, you know, when I say that there are racist people in Ireland, I'm not saying that everyone in Ireland is racist, or I hate Ireland. Like, I feel like I probably fit in Ireland more than anywhere else in the world. I feel more Irish than Kenyan. I feel more Irish than African sometimes,
Yeah,
sadly.
I get you. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And so tell me, like, what was it like when you first moved? Like,
Oh, it was weird, but it was good because to me, Ireland was like, an island was like Australia in my head, like the beach, the sun. That's what I imagined.
yeah.
It wasn't quite, but it was. Again, I speak French is my first language, so
Okay.
before I came, I could only say good morning, how are you, and that's the end. So
Oh my God.
yeah, so I had to learn English from zero, so it was quite daunting and difficult, but it was good. Yeah.
Wow. So where are you from?
So that's a very important question. I'm from the east of Africa. When I tell people that, they get confused. I'm from the east
Yeah,
of Africa.
because I was like, I was sure she's East African.
I am. So what I mean by I'm from East Africa is that so my mom is from Burundi, my
Yeah,
dad is from Rwanda,
yeah.
but I was born and raised in Congo, if you get
Oh,
me. So
wow.
yeah. So really, when I tell people I'm from Congo, they look at me, they're like, actually, you're not, because I don't look Congolese, but I was
Yeah,
born and raised, my parents were born in the Congo, but
yeah,
their parents were from, Burundi and
yeah.
Rwanda. So that's why when I say I'm from East Africa, I really am from the whole of East Africa.
Yeah, East Central-ish. Yeah.
Exactly.
Wow, that's incredible. And like that, you know, first of diverting a little bit, like mixed marriages are such a taboo in some places in Africa. Um,
Absolutely.
so I remember, side note, dating a guy from Zimbabwe and telling somebody in my family, and they were like, "What? How could you? You know, that's like dating from a different tribe." And you know, in my head, like, I don't
South
care
African.
about that, right? And then the shock when I told them that I was dating a white guy, and they were more accepting of the white guy than of, you know, the
Yeah.
African guy. Like, it's hilarious. So I think that's amazing that you've come from such a mixed background within Africa. And what people need to know, if you are non-African listening to this, is that Africa is a huge, huge, massive continent. You know, and like the maps don't quite represent how big Africa is. So when people stereotype and make us all sound like we're just one people, like, you're missing the point. It's like comparing for example, somebody from Poland with somebody from Ireland. They're completely different, yet same color, but
Mm,
completely different background, different language, different everything. So
exactly.
that's one thing I really would like for people to know who are
Yeah.
listening to this, is that Africa is big, East Africa is big, and we're all so different. So if a person from Congo or Kenya does something, first of all, you should never stereotype a whole country just based on what one person has done. And I find that a lot of people who stereotype Africans is because they've had one bad experience with an African person, and then they just assume that the rest of us are the same. It's like me, like choosing not to talk to white people because I've had white people be racist to me. Okay,
Exactly.
I'm deviating a little bit, but I'm a
No,
very
but you're
big
right.
person.
You're absolutely right because like
Yeah,
like I said, I'm from three complete different cultures.
yeah.
And so like I speak six African languages
Oh
because
my
I
God.
had no choice but
Yeah,
to do that because my
yeah,
mom spoke a different language to my dad, to
yeah.
where I grew up, to school, to my granny. So I had to learn really four different cultures altogether. And
Wow.
different. So I think you're right. People need to understand that when we speak of Africa, Africa isn't just Nigeria. Africa isn't just Congo.
Yeah,
Like in Congo, we have 284 languages
yeah,
in Congo.
Wow. I thought we
Yeah.
had many in Kenya. In Kenya, we have like 34. Wow. And like, yeah, it's just like, and then Africa, like here, like I feel like I need to say this, like Africa is gorgeous. And I think the picture that people in Europe and in America have of Africa is, you know, the pictures with the the advertising for trucker or concern
Black
or
babies.
whatever, black babies, poor black babies with malnutrition,
Yeah.
skinny arms and big bellies. I feel like for a long time that was just the way people viewed Africa, but it's bigger than that. Yes, we have problems and we have issues, but Africa is gorgeous and we have so many resources. And then another thing is that, you know, people migrate and move out of Africa for different reasons. So
Exactly.
I find like some people are doctors and nurses and whatever, and they're not able to
Yeah.
use their degrees over here, but people treat them like they had no education, like they, you know, and I think that comes down to, regardless of whether somebody has a third level education or not, we should treat people with respect, because just
Exactly.
because they're human beings. Um,
Absolutely.
yeah, sorry.
No,
All my
you're right.
soapboxes, I'm just like, but yeah, so moved to Ireland when you were 16. What was that like? Like, was that scary, having to learn a different language? Like,
Yeah.
was it
It
hard
was
to adapt?
scary. It was scary, definitely. But then again, it was nice. It was nice to kind of just, because as you know, in Africa, English is like, oh my God, like the
Yeah,
top layer on the ladder of languages. So
yeah,
being in a country that I could learn English, that I could, go to school and be whatever I wanted, that I
yeah.
could, just it was a bit
More,
daunting, but it was lovely. It was good.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. Like more opportunities as well sometimes,
exactly.
especially for, you know, for girls. I feel
Yeah.
like sometimes we have more opportunities here than elsewhere. Wow. So tell me about, like, have you encountered racism, direct, indirect, covert, overt? Like, you know, tell me, what has your experience been?
I think first of all, if any black person who says in Ireland who says that they've never experienced racism, either they're so unfortunately trauma has a way of teaching us different coping mechanisms, and some people choose to blank it out or not acknowledge it or just really close your eyes and not see it.
Mhm.
So if a black person tells me that they've never experienced racism, I'm sorry, but that is, you have to sit down by yourself and deep down look at the roots of that
Yeah,
statement, because I don't believe it.
yeah,
But also, have I experienced racism? Absolutely, everywhere, in the shops, on the streets, in Trinity College,
yeah,
doing a master's,
yeah.
in work. I've gone to places with people in my work, and automatically people in power assume I'm the service user, and the white person is the staff, for no other reason except just how I look. So
Yeah,
yes, I've experienced racism everywhere. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. I know, and I agree. Somebody, I was talking to a black woman this week, and they said they had not experienced racism here in Ireland, and a part of me felt some type of way. So I was kind of like, I so a mix of feelings. I'm such an emotional being, so I'm always like feeling stuff, and I'm like evaluating myself. So felt a bit jealous because I was like, why is it
I
that I'm the
know.
one that got
I know.
and
It's
then
such,
second of all,
yeah.
I was just like, is she in denial?
Yeah.
Like, you know, what's this? And I think there's a lot of being in denial, even on my part. Because when I went to America and I saw, so I lived in America for 3.5 years. And I saw the racism there, and it is much more heightened, purely because, you know, because it's so systemic. So you cannot help but see it. So people in America who say that they don't see it, whether white or black, are like like blind. Something is wrong with you. So I felt it. I saw it in church, and that was heartbreaking for me. Because you know me, I'm like sold out, and you know, so that was, you know, and I kept thinking to myself, Ireland is not that bad. Ireland is not that bad. And then I came back, and I was woke. You know, like America ruined me on so many levels, like just woke me up to injustices. And then I came back, and I couldn't even, I didn't talk about this in my first episode, but I couldn't get, so I was pregnant, 33 weeks pregnant when I came back. It was so difficult to get a place in the hospital. And then when I did, like they kept saying, you know, oh, so you're just here to have a baby. And I kept saying, no, like I'm Irish, and kept trying to show them my passport and whatever. And then one day, this woman, the admin person, came in when I was getting my bloods taken. So can you imagine? I was probably 35, 36 weeks pregnant at this point, like swollen feet, swollen everything. My face was swollen. I'm getting my bloods taken because I had diabetes. I'm stressing out. And then she walks in from the admin, from the office, to ask me for proof of my citizenship because, yeah, I'm getting my bloods taken. And I broke down and cried because I could not believe it. And then so not only that, so that happened. And then they brought me in to get induced. And I was in the hospital after getting induced for about 2 days. And then because there were no beds and all these people kept going ahead of me, whatever, I was just like, can I just go home? They're like, no, we've already, you know, they had already kind of broken my thing. And anyway, and then, but every nurse that came to look after me kept saying to me, so you're just here to give birth. And I was like, I don't even know where you got that from. Like, I've lived in Dublin most of my life. My husband's from here. Like, you know, and I kept having to tell them my story. And they were so mean. When the baby was born, one lady said to me, we have to give you the BCG vaccine because your baby is, you know, Kenyan. And I said, well, my baby is half Kenyan because my husband's from here. And I said, you know, I'm not quite sure if I want to give that to him straight away after he's born. And then she like went off on a rant. She was like, well, you're gonna be seeing Kenyan people in your house, and and I was just like, my Lord. And I actually gave in because I was like, my family doesn't live here, you know, because I tried to explain. It was just so bad. It was horrible. And do you know, like when I was leaving the hospital that day, 2 days after, another thing was they wouldn't give me pain relief. Yeah, wouldn't give me pain relief because they said you had a normal birth, and I was in so much pain. And then the next day after I gave birth, they didn't check my blood pressure, and I kept telling them that I wasn't feeling well, and I just kept feeling dizzy and just weak, and they kept saying, you're fine, you're fine. And then that evening they took my blood pressure, and it was so low. It was like 90 over something, like so bad. And then they started to panic. And then I said, can I go home either way? Just because, you know, nobody's looking after me. And then the nurse said, well, if you go home, it's your fault if something happens to you. After 24 hours of not being looked after. And that woke me up to the racism in Northern Ireland, and not because I hadn't gone through it before, but because before, when I went through it, I ignored it. So I either ignored it or just kept thinking to myself, life can't get better, and you know, this is just the way some people are. Or sometimes when you're a Christian, there's so much pressure to always forgive and forget. Forgive and forget, and not just being a Christian, but being African and Christian. I'm not sure what it is, but there's just so much pressure to just forgive and forget. So coming back from Ireland, from America, really woke me up, and I'm so glad I went there. I think I might have been too ignorant even to the hurtful things that people have done to me, and just because I'm Christian and I'm African, and all we do is forgive and forget.
Absolutely. And like also don't forget there's this proverb in French that it goes like, you never slap a hand that feeds you.
Yeah.
So I always say that the fact that I speak up against racism, I do know that it's a privilege. I do know that I'm standing in a spot that hundreds of people would love to be in, but for
Yeah.
so many reasons they can't.
Yeah.
They can't be in there. Either, say for instance, they have their, immigration issues,
Yeah.
or domestic violence at home,
Yeah.
or they just don't have the strength to come out and speak up against
Yeah.
it. So I feel it's an obligation that I have. The fact that I'm in this position and that hold these privileges, I have to speak up against racism, because, like you
Yeah.
said, especially the tool of a strong Black woman. I
Yeah.
absolutely hate that sentence,
Yeah.
because for generations, women have died.
Yeah.
Black women have been subjected to experiences to
Yeah.
prove how strong we are.
Yeah.
So I hate that, because for Black women are 5 times more likely to die during delivery than a
Yeah.
white person.
Yeah.
Come on.
Yeah.
That is ridiculous. So yes, I definitely get you that so many people don't want to see racism. So many people turn a blind eye. So many people are still waiting on so much from people who are abusing them. And
Yeah.
also, don't forget the power dynamic. Since the beginning of time, the
Yeah.
oppressors
Yeah.
have tools. They have tools and ways of convincing the oppressed that it's your
Yeah.
fault. You
Yeah.
shouldn't have done this. You should
Yeah.
have acted differently.
Yeah.
Sure, you can go back to where you came from,
Yeah.
or this is my house, this is my country, therefore I have power over you.
Yeah.
So it's this dynamic of power that's been
Yeah.
going on since forever. And unfortunately, Black people get the brunt of it, but Black women
Yes.
specifically, we get the brunt of it so
Yeah.
much, from white supremacy, from patriarchy, from
Yeah. Misogyny from our own men, from our own culture. I remember, like, I was in Kenya 2 years ago, over 2 years ago now, and my cousin's wife was breastfeeding and she wasn't covering, right? So this is normal in Africa. Like, people don't cover, and even in the West now, people are becoming more progressive, and in that sense, where people don't want to cover because they're just like, it's normal, it's whatever. But somebody in my family, I'm trying not to name people, I'm at this new phase where I'm like, I need to be professional. So somebody in my family was like, how dare you stick out that boob? And, and they were like, can you not look at Maureen and do what she does? Like, clearly my problem with showing my boobs should not be extended to somebody else. But I thought it was horrible because this person in my family was also female. And and then that same person said about this girl. So she's a young girl, she's been married, they had 2 kids, one of them just died recently, like, yeah, just really sad. And my cousin sometimes hits her, and this other relative said, well, she deserves it, the way she acts, she deserves to be beaten. So, like, Black women, we get it from white supremacy, we get it from our own cultures. We're just like the bottom of the food barrel, sadly.
absolutely.
Bottom of the food chain. And then if you're strong, my goodness, how many times have I heard that I'm just, a feminist, a this, a that? And I'm just like, no, I just want to take up my rightful place in society. I just want to take up my rightful place in the eyes of God for me, because that's a big thing. I want to take my rightful place beside the man, because, the Bible says that they were created both male and female equal. And so I don't understand when people bring religion, or when people bring race, when people bring whatever to show that we're not equal. We are equal. You might have larger lung capacities than me, but we're equal.
Exactly.
So I feel like we've segued into the effects of racism, and one of the things that we both said is that people kind of go into like a coping mechanism of denying that racism exists. So what other effects do you think, because of racism, like, how have you been affected by racism, or have you seen other people be affected by racism?
Absolutely. Yeah, sure. the World Health Organization acknowledges racism to be a core social kind of, I don't know if you've heard of this. You've heard of the, I just read just to make sure,
Mm-hmm.
the social determinants of health. Have you heard of that? So,
Yes.
yes, racism, the World Health Organization has acknowledged racism to be that. So,
Wow.
yeah,
Could
of
you
course.
explain more to the listeners? Like,
So basically, so for instance, a person born in a lower social economic background,
mm-hmm.
automatically, regardless of what you do,
Yeah.
that will affect your health,
Yeah.
right? It is
Yeah.
kind of a health determinant. So basically, it, things that we don't have a say in, things that just are there because of who we are, that affect
Yeah.
our health,
Yeah.
affect our position in life, affect, so those are kind of health determinants.
Yeah.
But like I said, it's health determinant. So they determine your health position
Yeah.
or your health
Yeah.
privilege or whatever. And
Yeah.
race is one of them.
Wow.
So that,
Isn't that
yeah,
crazy?
yeah,
Like, look at COVID right now. How many Black people have died? There are more Black people dying
exactly.
in England and in America than
Yeah,
any other race.
yeah,
And that is because of socioeconomic backgrounds. It's because of lower
absolutely.
income. You're living in flats. I know, like a lot of you know, my stepdad died from COVID. I know
Sorry.
other people. My two friends, my two female pastors. Woo, power to the women. Um, they both had it. They both got COVID. Over there in England, like just so many of us who were getting it, and a lot of us dying because of these other diseases that
Yeah,
are determined by lifestyle. And you look at places like America where you have food deserts. So where people can't get fresh food, or
yeah,
fresh food is too expensive, so they eat unhealthy food. So a lot of them have diabetes and hypertension and all these other things. And that's why COVID is affecting them more than than any other race,
yeah.
sadly, which is
But
sad because
also,
yeah,
yeah. But also, if you think about it, when we talk during COVID-19, we were talking about people on a higher risk.
yeah,
And when we spoke about being high risk, we spoke, people thought of diabetes or heart problems or cancer, whatever. But if you think about it, if you're always on a high, if you're always heightened,
yeah,
always on the ready to
yeah,
defend yourself, always on the ready to
yeah,
accept negativity, that
yeah,
affects your mental health.
yes,
So Black people were a priority in COVID-19 because
yeah,
they're already at risk from
yeah,
their mental health, like Black people were at risk
yeah,
from the beginning, even before COVID-19.
yeah,
So, but unfortunately, the Western world doesn't see racism the way we see it because
yeah,
we face it, we live it.
we
We,
live
we
it.
have, yeah, we have the consequences of it every day. And so therefore, it's not on the radar. It's not on the agenda of being a
Yeah,
priority, but it is a priority for us to face it every day. Because if you think about it, when you have to plan your day in ways of not
yeah,
getting abused,
yeah,
that is wrong.
yeah, yeah,
So much that we've expected to be abused, we've accepted to face racism on a daily, that our our plans involved, how do I not get racism? How
yeah,
do I avoid it? How do I plan my journey to work in
yeah,
ways that I'll be at a lower risk of
yeah,
being abused? And
yeah,
excuse my
and
French, but that messes up with your mind. That messes
yeah,
up with your mental health. So we
yeah,
are at risk.
yeah, and it's like I feel like I lived like that. I'm feeling just kind of triggered because for a long time I minimized who I was.
Yeah,
I made sure that my hair was straight. I made sure that on the bus I did not look at anyone a certain way, or I did not, that I made sure that I blended in so that I wouldn't get abused. that I wouldn't get the, effing N-word, go back to your country, type of thing. I made sure that my hair was always straight. And I'm telling you, there was a time when I couldn't leave my house without straightening my hair, without my weave, or, I made sure that my makeup was done because I wanted to look a certain way. I wanted my hair not to be a point of interest to anyone, If it was straight, I knew that, nobody would be trying, will be hopefully not saying anything. However, like I said in my last podcast, it was so bad sometimes that even my braids, people would try and set my braids on fire, and because they found out that we use fake hair and synthetic hair, and they wanted to, I don't know. So there's a lot of minimizing of ourselves. There's a lot of trying to fit in, so that the racist white people don't pick on us. And I think that does something to your identity, doesn't it?
Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely.
And it reminds me of narcissism. So if you've ever suffered a narcissistic abuse, it's this person who's always kind of chipping away at you, always criticizing you, or always putting you down. And because of that, you don't know who you are. Your identity is all messed up. And if somebody's always telling you that black people are stupid, or black people are this, or black people are that, then you start to believe it. And do you want to say something? Because I feel like
no. I was just gonna say, I think we need to come to a point where we have to shift responsibility and blame from victims to the people doing the harm. And this is something that's happening in domestic violence so much, but we are forgetting, again, as I said, racism isn't on the radar of anybody, unfortunately. So I feel it's up to us people who, as I said, who are in places of privilege, on speaking louder, because we need to shift the blame and responsibility from us being subjected to racism to the people, to the system, to the structures that are allowing racism to continue going on and on. As I said, people make themselves be so small so that they're not subjected to racism. People don't speak louder, I know who they are. In work, oh my God, it breaks my heart so much when I see black people, older people, in their 40s or whatever, late 30s, 50s. They make themselves look so small. They're not themselves, I can be surrounded by black people, but I'm so alone. When you speak up against injustice, you're so alone. When you speak up against something that's going wrong, your black family members make you feel like you're too much. Calm down a little,
Yeah, I've had that happen to me. I was told, that, you're not going to get hired, if you keep talking like that, because I've been looking for pastoral work, and apparently it's offensive, that, the things that I'm talking about. So family members actually told me that the reason I'm not getting hired is because, that's because of I'm speaking up, and I'm like, I'd rather not get hired if you're not going to hire me for speaking up about injustice. But can we talk a little bit about PTSD? You did talk about how if you're always heightened, always kind of having to defend yourself, or how that affects you. Have you been affected in that way, or do you know people, or
I think we all have, to be honest. I'll give you an example. I was reading the newspaper, I think it was yesterday, and someone gave an example. He said that he was attacked a few weeks ago. No, about 2 years ago, he was attacked and was robbed. So obviously, if for a few weeks after that, he had he was anxious going out. He had PTSD. Obviously, who was looking at him, he was frightened. But after a while, that went away, because he realized he was in the wrong place at the wrong time. It could have happened to anybody. It's part of life. He forgotten. But then he went into a shop, and the shop assistant told him that he couldn't be served because they were only taking cash. He had a card. But then as he left the shop, the person behind him, a white person, got served, and he paid cash. So when he left,
So this is during Corona, first of all.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
like you should be taking card, not cash.
exactly. So when he left the shop, he obviously, that situation made him feel so small. You know, he knew it was because he was black that he wasn't served, because everyone else got served that was white. So he was just trying to compare the two scenarios. He goes, the first scenario, yes, I got PTSD, but I quickly realized that it wasn't because of how I looked. It was because I was in the wrong time, in the wrong place, and it could have happened to anybody. But the second scenario, that I was personally picked because of how I looked.
Yeah.
So that is never gonna go away, because every time he walks into a shop,
Yeah.
he's on a high already, thinking, am
Yeah.
I gonna get served?
Yeah.
People are gonna look at me differently? You
Yeah.
know, so it's a different type of PTSD, in a sense that it doesn't matter who you are or how you're dressed or what
Yeah.
degree you have or what qualifications you have.
Yeah.
The way I look, my skin color precedes anything else I'm able to do.
Yeah. And isn't it shocking? Like I've had people be like, oh, like you when you say you have a master's and people are like, oh, or like, well, my favorite, well, let me go back to this guy first of all. So I remember when I was in college in DIT, not being, going out to clubbing with friends of mine, and they were all white. They were all allowed in, and I wasn't.
Oh my
I
gosh.
will never
Imagine.
forget that night because I was trying to figure out like what it was. You know, this
Yeah.
was when I was still kind of very naive about race.
Mm.
But I was dressed cute, I looked nice, and
Yeah.
I was just like, why are they not letting me in? I had my ID, I had everything, and they still wouldn't let me in. But yeah, let's talk about like another thing that gives me PTSD is when I'm in a group with white people,
Mm.
like just not knowing how people are going to react to me or the things that people are going to say. And I've had people say things like, oh, you know, aren't you very lucky? Like when I worked in a private hospital, oh, you're so lucky to be here. Or, you know, like, oh, you have a master's.
Mm.
Like that's not normal in this day
Yeah.
and age for people to have an education. You know, or people are surprised, and I've had this happen to me a lot here in Northern Ireland. People are surprised that I'm outspoken,
Mm.
that I speak up. And I want to know, like, what kind of black people are they meeting? Because the black people I know talk, but maybe
Mm.
those black people are not talking in the presence, you know.
But see,
But yeah,
black people don't talk really. Black people talk within black people.
within,
Yeah. Out there, like I said, out there, I can be in the room with 10 black people and I'll be so alone. And that's the most
yeah,
frustrating thing ever, because you think they would understand you, but they don't want to understand you because they've internalized that hate, they've internalized that bias that
yeah,
black people are loud, black people, you know, like we want to fight to get what we want. But white people do the same.
yeah,
You know, and also I always tell people, if I come to you telling you something happened to me and you telling me, you're gaslighting me, telling me that wasn't true,
okay,
if I tell you that over and over again, I'm gonna have to be loud for you to get me. I'm gonna
right,
have to be loud for you to understand. So
right,
sometimes me being loud is a defense mechanism that
yeah, or
systems have put in place for me. That's how systems and structures have made for me to survive. I have to be loud. I have to work 10 times harder than my white friends. So I
yeah,
have to be loud.
yeah,
Systematically, I have to be loud. Do you know what I mean? So,
yeah. But like you could also be loud just because it's your personality, or outspoken just because it's your personality, you know.
exactly. Yeah.
But there's no room for that either. Like
No.
it's just like there's no like making people happy, you know. You're constantly having to rethink, or when I say something I'm constantly wondering, you know, how did that come across, like, you know, how did I offend anyone, right?
Exhausting,
They
girl.
could say and some people say really hurtful things to me, but
Yeah.
yet they don't think, have I offended this person? Do you know what I mean? But
True.
I'm always having to second guess myself because I've
Absolutely.
been gaslighted before. I've experienced narcissistic abuse through racism, because I think racism is a form of narcissism. And
Absolutely.
especially when a person of color, when a Black person says, I've experienced this, and you want to be like, well, you know, was it this? Like,
Because
don't gaslight me. If I tell you that this happened to me, it happened. If I got raped and I tell you that I got raped, don't say, you know, whose fault was it or whatever. Like, it
exactly.
happened. It happened. And, you know, so stuff like that, it just drives me crazy.
Yeah.
But I want to talk about, like, I know I keep talking about PTSD and then moving on, but
Yeah.
when I came back from America, I did not realize how much PTSD I had from watching all the videos of the Black men being shot over there. And then I can't remember who got shot after I came back. And I was sitting in, I think down here, and just, I remember like my body shaking and like tears falling, and like I was kind of rocking back and forth, and I, you know, and I couldn't believe that reaction.
Yeah.
But I had seen it so much when I was over there, videos and whatever. And I think I thought, a part of me thought that when I came back to Ireland, I would forget, you know, not that it's a good thing, but I thought that I would be detached from that experience, but I wasn't. And I was actually, it affected me for about a month. And then I started seeing a counselor, not just for that, but for other things. And I just remember thinking, wow, like I'm experiencing PTSD.
Yeah. Yeah.
From, you know, and I just kept thinking, and I guess maybe I had just had a baby as well, and I was thinking, you know, he's a boy, he's a Black man, and my 2 Black boys, and it just triggers, everything is so triggering for us.
Yeah.
Like the last month has been so triggering. I've
Oh,
had days
girl.
when I haven't left where like leaving my bed has been traumatic. Like I couldn't face the day because I was just like, this is happening. How long is this going to happen? Are my children going to have to deal with this? Like, you know, and you know, and it just so triggering.
Yeah,
and we're living
absolutely.
with this.
Yeah. And it's a sad reality that I think some Black people have accepted that to be their fate.
Yeah.
Someone asked me the other day, he goes, why is it that Black people hang around together in colleges, in school? They hang around with each other. They never kind of assimilate. They never integrate into people. And I was like, do you know what? That is a type of PTSD if you think about it. Because if I know that every time I come into your group, I will be, first of all, I'll be carrying my whole race on my shoulders, because anything I say will be all the Black people the same. Anything I do, it will be Black people are like this. So why would I subject myself into going into situations that I know will trigger me? There's always plan B. Plan B is to hang around people who get you. Those people might not speak up, those people might not, but it's peace of mind.
Yeah. It's totally. Like I get it, but I'm one of those, like you, and one of those Black people that, you know, still goes out looking for white people and white friends. And I have friends from, you know, almost every background. You know, if you look at my Facebook, I have people who follow me, people who are my friends on Instagram and whatever, from different races, because for me, I try not to let that stop me. But there is something so, it's like you've gone as far as marrying a white guy like I did.
Yeah, exactly. And people find that so weird when I speak up against racism. I'm like, oh, by the way, my soon-to-be husband is white. And they're like, what? Especially actually, do you know what? I get the bad reactions from Black people. Mostly.
I know, me too. Well, both, but I've seen it with Black people too.
I think for me, white people, it's shock, but Black people, it's actually anger, and as if I've betrayed my race.
You've betrayed the race, especially as a Black woman. Black men can do it. Black
men can do it
all the time. They can go have 10 babies with 10 white women, and nobody says anything.
I was just this past week, I'm reading on a topic, it's called misogynoir. So it's about the
Yeah,
misogyny on Black women specifically.
yeah,
I never knew about it. I saw it, but I didn't really extensively read about on it.
yeah.
And oh my God, girl, I'm like mind blown. It is amazing. The fact that the I think if the world really wants to eradicate racism, they
Yeah,
need to listen to Black women,
yeah,
100%.
yeah,
Because we're subjected to racism, as I said, but patriarchy from our own brothers. Did you see the girl who died just 2 days ago?
yeah.
And do you know what the Black community said? They were like, this is an internal, issue. Let's not talk about it in public because white people will use that against us. And I'm like, hang on. We are complaining that white people are treating us differently, are treating
Yeah,
us wrong, but you don't want us to talk about our own brothers.
yeah.
You were silencing us to talk about your hate, your
Mhm.
misogyny towards us,
Yeah,
but you want us to talk
that's
about white
too.
people? That's
It's too
hypocrisy.
progressive. When it's like when you take it to like speaking up for women's rights, and when you take it
Mm.
to speaking up for gay rights,
Yeah,
LGBTQ plus rights, then people think, oh, that's too progressive. But
yeah,
they're human beings.
exactly.
For if you're asking for equality, equity for
Mm.
everyone, for Black people and white people and whatever, then
Everyone.
you must extend it to Black women. You must extend
Absolutely.
it to the LGBTQ plus
Yeah,
people.
yeah,
You must extend, because they are human beings. Nobody
absolutely.
deserves to be treated in an inhumane way, regardless of what you think about their lifestyle. Um,
Exactly.
but yeah, we can be such hypocrites, and actually the biggest opponents to the Black Lives Matter movement sometimes can be Black people that I know, African Black people, people who, directly coming from Africa,
Yeah.
coming from the Caribbean,
Mm.
who don't get the struggle, and
Yeah.
um, it just drives me crazy. They don't see any problem because they're happy with their little cushy lives,
Yeah.
and they've made a life for themselves, in the colonies, and they're just happy enough, serving
Yeah.
the master and not speaking up.
Yeah.
And
But like,
I
don't they say it or they choose not to say it? I think there's a big
I
difference.
I think they choose
Yeah,
not to see it. They choose
I
not to
think so.
see it, and they are offended if
Yeah.
you see it and speak up about it.
Of
And they're
course.
offended if you are a Black woman that is not carrying yourself in the way a Black woman should. Um, yeah, should. So I refuse
No.
to be put down. I am taking my rightful place as a human being, as a Black woman, as a
Yeah.
Black person. As a Black woman, I'm taking my rightful place in this world. I refuse to be apologetic. I refuse to let guilt, shame, fear, because those are three things that I felt that I've lived with for so long because of racism, but because of also other traumatic events from my childhood, fear, guilt, and shame. And I am shedding them off, and I am just gonna walk with my shoulders lifted high. I'm unapologetic, and I'm so glad. And
Amen to that.
sadly, yeah, I'm so glad that something good is coming out of George Floyd's death. I'm sad that he had to die. I'm
Yeah.
sad that he had to be executed, publicly lynched, um, lynched, like literally, like. But I'm sad that had to happen. But I've met so many white people who are asking questions, so many white people who want to hear my story, so many
Yeah.
white people who are like, wow, I never thought of that, I never thought of that.
Mm.
So to you, beautiful white people, we say thank you, we love
Thank
you.
you. Yeah.
Our husbands,
Mm.
people in our families who are white and are listening. My sister-in-law called me on Sunday, and she was just like, I want to talk about this. I just listened to your podcast. So
Uh-huh.
I love that. I love that.
Yeah.
And because we're
Definitely.
all human, and you know what? If it was happening to white people, I would be fighting. I would be
Absolutely.
fighting left, right, and center. If it was happening to Asian people, whatever, I would be fighting. And like, we need to keep fighting, keep speaking up. Yeah. Is there anything you want to leave us with? Any gems of wisdom?
You've said it, but the only thing I'm gonna say is like, for me, when we talk about Black Lives Matter, I know it's an uncomfortable topic, especially because there's this notion for,
Yeah.
for so long that of white supremacy. Therefore, challenging that is uncomfortable for me and for white people.
Yeah.
So the only thing I'm gonna say before I go is that we all have ways of challenging racism. We all, it doesn't matter how big or small, we all
Yeah.
have ways of challenging it. So it's about how do you use your privilege as a white person?
Yeah.
How do you use your presence, your knowledge, your platforms,
Yeah.
anything to support the Black movement, really support
Yeah.
Black people? Because, someone said that Black people, we have so many allies, we have
Yeah.
so many mentors that we follow and we look up to and we acknowledge. But what we need is gatekeepers.
Yeah.
Be our gatekeepers,
Yeah.
like support Black people, because we
Yeah.
don't have that. The system
Yeah.
doesn't, the
Yeah.
structures don't. So just
Yeah.
use whatever privilege you have and whatever platform you have to be
Yeah.
an ally,
Yeah.
a real ally to Black people, and
Yeah.
learn, read, practice, and always think how. Again, sorry, I go on and on.
No, it's okay.
Someone said that before you send a letter, you always proofread and make
Yeah.
sure, is it correct? Did I do it properly? The same should apply when you're talking
Yeah.
to a Black person or interacting with them. Just have a think, and when you say something in the guise of I'm only joking or I'm messing or I'm
Mhm.
only asking, please be aware that the I'm only joking to you leaves
Yeah.
an everlasting mark
Uh,
on me.
yeah.
Just be aware and be mindful that you're only joking might be we've had people die by suicide from
Hmm. Yeah.
so racism is real. It
Yeah.
is real. So
Yeah.
just use your platforms and your privilege to
Yeah.
be an ally and
Yeah.
challenge bias. Please don't let any prejudice go unchallenged, because
Yeah.
then you are part of the problem.
Yeah. It's not enough to not be racist. You need to be
Mm,
anti-racist. Like,
absolutely.
that is the one thing. If you're a white person listening to this, like, be anti-racism. That is a calling on your life, every single one of you. Like, you need, and especially if you are a believer, if you are a believer, whatever sort, Christian, Islam, whatever. A lot of religions do teach peace, and and the world needs peace. It needs people who are peacemakers, people who are extending God to other people. Um, and speaking of suicide, I met a couple of years ago a white couple who had adopted a Black girl, um, two Black girls, and one of them actually ended up committing suicide because she grew
Oh,
up in the 80s, 70s, and the 80s in rural Ireland, and
no,
experienced so much racism that she ended up taking her life. So this is serious. This is,
it is serious.
we're not just crying out for the sake of it. Um, when people say, oh, you're just looking for attention, or here we go again, or whatever, like, it is not. Like, we don't need your attention in this manner.
No.
If we were trying to get attention, we would do it in another way. We
Yeah,
just need to be treated like human beings, to be treated
exactly.
with respect, to be treated with love. And even if you can't give love, at least just respect.
Yeah,
Just respect the human
yeah.
dignity. That's all we need. And so I'm going to end this with prayer, because I know I didn't do that the last time.
Yeah.
And I just want to say thank you, God, for this moment, this deep moment of communication with Diane. I want to thank you because you're a good God, and you're a mighty God, and you're a loving God, a God who extends his love to other people. And I know that you have been misrepresented by people. There are people who use the Bible to justify racism. There are people who use the Bible to justify hatred. And there are people who use the Bible to justify misogyny and sexism and all sorts of things. But God, we know that you are love, and we need you in these difficult times. And God, I thank you for the people like Diane that you're using to raise awareness in Ireland, and for the people that you're raising up in Northern Ireland and in America and in the rest of the world. I just want to thank you that I get to rant, but I also get to pray, and just to leave it with you, for you to just deal with it and have your way. So God, thank you. In Jesus' name, amen.
Thank you. Amen.
Amen. Diane, it's been wonderful.
Me too.
Thank you so much for coming.
No
And
problem.
let's do this often.
Yes, I agree.
Take care, girl. Say hi to
Thank
your
you. Bye.
Bye. Bye.
Bye bye.